Naboram kaur mau nariri won eao.
One of the most fascinating countries for international shortwave radio listeners continues to be Papua New Guinea, a large archipelago of islands to the immediate north of Australia, and mainly because it has some 20 locally operating shortwave radio stations, and also because they seem to operate in a kind of information black hole. Hello, I'm David Rickwish in the Wellington studios of Radio New Zealand International, and today we're going to attempt to shed some light on today's broadcasting scene in Papua New Guinea. It's much more than shortwave radio. We'll have a look at some websites, share some of the ongoing research we use to maintain our databases for the World Radio TV Handbook and the PAL Radio Guides, and enjoy some music from here in the Radio New Zealand International Library. We'll start with a radio station that began broadcasting around 10 years ago, so it's a relative newcomer on the dials, but it's well known through its shortwave outlet, and this is Wontok Radio Light. It has a dated website, wontokradio.org, but you'll find a lot of useful information about the station, sometimes known as the Papua New Guinea Christian Broadcasting Network. There's a good coverage map, photos of some of their FM relays on high hilltops, a daily log of their program guide, which includes a lot of automated music, and information about their partners, who include HCJB and the owners of the Radio Light radio network in Fiji. In late 2010, they completed a full upgrade of satellite receivers for their existing network of FM stations, and in 2011 they'll be adding around 10 more FM outlets as part of their new radio license conditions. A new radio licensing authority has been increasing the pace of change recently. The two main mobile phone operators have to expand their services, first on a regional basis, then through a series of even smaller geographical markets, until even the smallest rural village has full coverage, including broadband technology. And this is creating a major change for radio services. Firstly, it's building the infrastructure from which more FM radio signals can be broadcast, and many of the high mountainous tower locations allow coverage of between 100 and 200 kilometres. MP3 standard stereo signals are now reaching places that half a century ago had hardly even seen a European. Secondly, the young population buys subsidised mobile phones with built-in FM receivers, and these are now the primary way of listening to local radio. In the capital of Port Moresby, for example, which has a population estimated around 350,000, there are now some 15 different FM radio brands competing for an audience. Thirdly, the new FM licenses which are being issued to replace older ones, and these have specific dates by which planned network expansion must be completed. They often follow the expansion of the mobile phone tower infrastructure rollout, which in turn is being done at the same time as the National Power Authority upgrades its power supply systems. And what's causing this boom in infrastructure investment? Mining, oil and natural gas are being developed by Australian, Chinese and North American companies, and highways are being built across the rugged landscape as much as superhighways are being built across the skies using satellites, broadband and new FM radio services.
Koliwe makoliwe, koliwe makoliwe, wae romana koliwe wa. Koliwe makoliwe, koliwe makoliwe, wae wae rumana koliwe wae.
Telecom, one of the mobile phone companies, operates FM 100, the former commercial Kalang FM network of the state broadcaster MBC, which it took over for non-payment of bills some years ago. Now it's known as Reaching You 100%, FM 100, and it's embarking on a remarkable FM rollout designed to literally reach 100% of the population across the entire archipelago. The FM 100 website is fm100.com.pg, and it makes a real effort to be contemporary in both style and content. You'll find photos of the DJs such as Patrick Patu, who handles breakfast, Roger Haufa, who's been taking talkback radio for over 25 years, and Willie G, who hosts the Barocco Motors Drive Show every afternoon. Yes, there's a drive show in Port Moresby, and there's a freeway system, and an ever-growing number of modern high-rise office blocks leading back from the waterfront and the harbour. The website says they target 23 to 40-year-olds with high disposable income and claims a potential audience across Papua New Guinea of around 2.5 million listeners. They invite advertisers with the claim, "Our clients get results." It's that simple. The strongest commercial competition is the Now FM and Yumi FM combo, owned by PNG FM, which in turn is owned by Communications Fiji Limited, a public company listed on the Suva Stock Exchange. Now FM targets the westernised urban youth market in the English language. It began operations in 1994, followed in 1997 by sister network Yumi FM, which uses Dokpizin with local music and adult contemporary music targeting a far broader market. And according to their latest investors report, PNG FM claims very strong advertising growth in 2010, with revenues up by almost 30% in what they call a booming economy. A new studio complex has been opened, and the owners claim to have two strong brands, a good product and weak competition. They have a website, pngvillage.net, but you'll find little of substance there as the two networks continue their physical FM expansion and their Fijian owners invest in a new movie complex for Port Moresby and expand into corporate events such as expos for the mining sector. Earlier, we mentioned Wontok Radio Light, and this country, with hundreds of languages and dialects, excites the hearts of missionaries who feel challenged to preach their messages to millions of potential radio listeners. Factional tensions within the Catholic faith closed down the original Catholic radio network some years ago, replacing it with a branch of Radio Maria in Port Moresby, which now produces some network radio programs. However, a grassroots network of locally owned community stations, loosely known as the Voice of Blessed Peter Torot Radio, continues to flourish and expand with more FM radio stations. Radio Gabriel in Vanimo in Western Sepik Province is one of these, and sometimes operates on shortwave to expand its coverage into nearby Irian Jaya across the border in Indonesia, less than 20 kilometres away. In Mount Hagen, capital of the Western Highlands Province, both Trinity FM and KBBN Krai Bilang Bible join with Wontok Radio Light to bring 3 religious radio programs into the area, which, along with even more religious programs on the commercial and NBC stations serving the town, must have the locals very confused as the various faiths each put forward their own interpretations of the Bible. Throughout the country, you'll also find a vibrant network of individual music recording studios, and these provide a foundation for the large amount of local contemporary music you'll find on FM 100, Yumi FM, FM Central, FM Morobe, and a growing number of other commercial radio stations. Shortwave listeners may have already heard some of this music from Radio Fly, broadcasting from Tabubul in the Western or Fly province. The station is owned by the large OK Teddy Mining Company, one of the leading companies behind the current economic boom times. The state broadcaster NBC is also expanding its FM coverage of the country as part of a plan to replace its shortwave and AM radio services within a few years. However, there are funding and resource problems, and it's reasonable to comment that the NBC has fallen behind its private sector rivals in recent years. A visit to their website, nbc.com.pg, brings the encouraging news that the site is undergoing maintenance, but you'll still find an outdated list of their Karai, or National Voice of Papua New Guinea, and Kundu, or regional networks. Currently, they maintain a network of some 18 regional shortwave stations, which can be observed to often operate irregularly because of funding, security, technical and staffing problems. In the past, they've had entire studios and tower systems burned down with tribal fighting, and land on which their silent shortwave towers stand near Port Moresby was the subject of a very complicated lawsuit. However, their Kundu stations are still the backbone of national radio for the country, with much imaginative support from popular local DJs and a relatively small group of technicians who do their best to keep their shortwave, AM and FM services operating to full normal schedules. New concepts such as Tribe FM, a contemporary national youth program heard late every Saturday night, are trying to break through the inertia that seems to grip the NBC. But recent moves to place funding into the hands of the regions has seen some Kundu stations want to buy new shortwave equipment to serve locals because of their frustration at the delays in rolling out the FM network. In the meantime, the audience grows, becomes younger and more urbanised, and the focus moves to using cheap mobile phones as FM receivers. FM 100, Now FM, Yumi FM, Wontok Radio Light, and other new stations expand their FM networks across the country at a rapidly increasing pace, and the economic boom times continue. Radio in Papua New Guinea today is much more than some 20 radio stations on the tropical shortwave bands, and when the internet streaming begins to work at websites like those of FM 100, listeners around the world will have a taste of the changes now taking place on the radio dial in this wondrous country. I'm David Requesh in the Wellington studios of Radio New Zealand International for the Radio Heritage Foundation, and our global website, radioheritage.com, is where you'll find our latest PAL radio guides for Asia and the Pacific and features about broadcasting in Papua New Guinea. My special thanks to Adrian Sainsbury of Radio New Zealand International for helping on the panel today and for breaking Pacific news, shortwave schedules, audio-on-demand programs, and Radio New Zealand International streaming online. Visit rnzi.com.
Ali